of things that were covered tonight already. And I started out with a question just a minute ago to Paul about the acromial line and the midline, and those are lines you probably have heard about from some of our other speakers that I brought over here in the past with me, and I asked them how that fit into the myofascial thinking about things. And you want to just answer that one? Or
Sure.
Some of these guys know that?
Sure. So the basic idea behind the acromial line is that if you were to take your acromions and draw this line, that you don't want to take your throwing arm behind this line. But and I'll show some video tomorrow of a couple of guys that do this. That my thought is that what you saw, especially if you saw some of the say the discus throwers, and you see pitchers, that what you have to do, I'll let you fold that so I can show this, so that if I want to take my throwing arm back here, okay, because it just feels natural for me, right? And for some guys, especially tall guys, okay, if you think of Chris Sale is 6'6". Madison Bumgarner, 6'5". Scherzer, 6'3". There's a whole lot of tall pitchers. You see guys that do this. What do they have to do in order to kind of maintain this relationship? If this arm goes here, and I'm gonna load, right, in this plane of movement, what's this arm need to do? Forward. It's got to go here. Okay. So they're able to do that, and to buy themselves enough time and to keep their body where it needs to be, so that. And the whole idea behind, well, I don't want to take my throwing arm back here is because if you were to do this and you put your hand on the head of your humerus, okay, well, the head of the humerus now is going to really move around. But if I'm able to kind of get in this position, I can keep the head of my humerus centered in the glenoid socket. And so I'm not going to put a whole lot of stress as I then rotate and throw the baseball. Okay, because the whole idea is, yes, I need to keep the head of my humerus centered in the socket on the labrum, okay? But if the head of the humerus pulls back too much, there's going to be a little. But if I pull it back too far, now what happens is I throw, the head of the humerus bangs into the labrum, and that's how you end up getting fraying, tearing, a whole lot of labral issues in the front of your shoulder. But as long as you're able to keep it centered, okay, and I make this move with my hip, my back hip, my front shoulder, then it works. Is that explain?
Okay, that's good, yeah. Okay. David, you were talking about speeding up practice a little bit and challenging in practice. I was thinking of chaos training, which is talked about down at the ranch a lot, one of our sponsors, and how chaos training with pitching is just using different kinds of balls and different kinds of implements instead of just throwing a baseball. And I was wondering about how many guys here do things, try to introduce some of these. We could, like you say, like a couple of us have said already, we're going to learn from you guys. How many of you do something like this with your trainings now, where you introduce something that's really not baseball? What do you do?
Yeah, we often use the soft, the gummy ball. I don't know, the caoutchouc.
Like Nerf balls?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and the tennis ball as well.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty good, I think. Yeah.
What do you do with those?
We often throw. We often be at bat as well. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. There's somebody else in the back. What do you do?
A lot of football. A lot of football throwing.
A lot of football throwing?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else that introduce other things? Yes?
We call them wheelers, where that you throw, and when you throw them right, they make a sound from the air going through.
So it's like a football. You can't throw a spiral unless you throw it correctly.
Well, it's not like a football. It's
but
like,
I mean, it makes a certain sound. If you don't throw it correctly, it won't make that noise.
Yeah.
Okay. How about when you're doing your warm-ups with your players? just throwing baseballs. Well, they're doing their plyos, or they're doing their little hurdle jumps. And when you're doing your plyometrics before practice, toss baseballs to them as they're doing these things. What does it make them do?
Pay attention.
Pay attention, and it also challenges them. So you can all think of challenges that could make practice a lot more difficult, but more fun at the same time. Any questions from you guys? We got a lot of things, and I'm sure tomorrow we'll have a hot stove at the end of the session tomorrow. But I'm sure just tonight you've probably got some things going through your head, and you might want to ask more about. Or if you wanted to, we haven't talked about hitting at all today yet. We've just been talking about throwing and a lot of philosophy. So, or infield or outfield, and we're not going to really cover infield or outfield during the course of this, or catching basically. So, if you have questions about those things, let's go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, I think Dave said something that wasn't in his talk, but I picked up that I wanted to check about. So the concept of trying to get live pickoffs without live pitching. So you were talking about having the pitcher on the mound,
Yeah.
but having the coach reacting to whether he picks off or whether he goes home.
Yes.
How does that work?
So, let's say you've got a game going on and there's a bunt scenario. We have runners on base, nobody out, we have a bunt scenario. We are always working around, the work volume of pitchers. So how can we train to the truth even though they can't throw? There's not going to be velocity. So we have a coach come up to, close up on the hitter to have reaction time. They're seeing a ball out of a hand. Okay, it's random as the game is, 2-pitch mix. The pitcher gets a sign, comes set. So the sign goes to the coach. He's going to deliver the pitch, right? So we sign off on the pitch. We make our read and we pick or we pitch. Everything is live except the pitcher he never pitches the ball to home plate. The coach is doing that. And there's no need. It's a live bunt situation. There's no need for an I screen or an L screen. It ends up so it's live. It's very challenging. You can make it. You can challenge them with music, so they have to rely on their eyes and reading things, so they can't hear and the verbal parts of things. Again, you can make it as challenging as you want there with the pitches and the mix and the distance. Keep score. Make competitive. Execution's a point. Non-execution's a minus point. Lead runner's 2 points. If you don't get the lead runner, you still get 1 point at first base. You can come up with scenarios to score, which we do. All right. So there's a lot of different pieces to the play that can be executed or not. Right. But it's much more challenging. And again, there's two things I recognize in traveling around from the big leagues to the Dominican Republic is guys aren't really good at executing offensively with bunts, and guys aren't very good at defending them. And that's one of the trends that I see. And there's sabermetrics guys that say there's just not a lot of value to the bunt thing. I agree to disagree. I think there are scenarios for both. But I certainly think if nothing else, you have to be able to defend it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually the kind, because we have the problem that we have limited pitchers, and so we have limitations to live pitching.
Right, and that's why we use the coach pitch.
And especially, we practice on Wednesday and Friday games. On Saturday, you can't do live pitching on Friday. We
Right.
only have 2 pitchers.
Right.
But that could get a more live game with not wasting our pitchers.
So here's another scenario. I call it the jungle, live jungle. All right. You practice in the zoo, you're screwed. You need to practice in the jungle. We play in the jungle at night, right? So I ordered these I screens, which are smaller than an L screen, right? And so I'll have 2 shells, an offensive shell and a defensive shell. Full squat. Pitcher on the mound, coach pitch. The I screen, it allows for balls to get through the middle where an L screen's kind of wide and it shuts stuff down, right? So we'll say, all right, here's our game today. Every inning is a high leverage inning. All right, it's going to be the 7th inning, 8th inning, or 9th inning. In the 7th inning, we're going to have the inning's going to begin with nobody out, runners on first and second. All right, and the manager can run his offense, put some stuff on. What's he going to do? So you get coaching reps going on, and the other manager, he's running the other club. He's running the offense. He's going to put some offensive stuff going on. Everyone's getting reps and reads, right? And then you run it. and you play the inning out as is, all right, boom, flip it. You get your 3 outs, you flip it, all right? The next inning, we start with a runner on second base and no outs. Situationally, you want to do something. Do you want to bunt him over? Do you want to drag push? Do you want to work it to the right side? What do you want to do, right? But again, the pitcher, the coach, is making it challenging. He's moving the ball around. The hitter's getting yes, yes, no. It's all decision-making, identification of a pitch, all right? And the defense, essentially, you're working on that 15 seconds between pitches where, it's not practice of ground ball, ground ball, ground ball. You have to think, what is he thinking between the 15 seconds? He's thinking about ball to my left, ball to my right, ball in front of me, speed of the ball, speed of the runner, what's the inning, what's the score. All the information that we base our decisions on is involved in this. And I call them live grills. And I do the same thing with base running, and I do a lot of stuff with that ice cream, and I come up with shells, and they say, we can't do it, we don't have enough defenders. That's okay. Right field's closed. We'll work something else out. Or close left and center right while we're working on something offensively. Whatever. We come up and be creative with those things. But it's literally limitless as to how you can train. And we don't train nobody on, nobody out. We put them in high leverage situations. When we have inter-squad games and we have pitchers who have bullets to spare, we play high leverage scenarios. We've played games where this inning, it's every hitter's a 3-2 count. So, and maybe the next inning it's a 1-0 or a 1-1 count. Next inning could be 9th inning, runner on second, nobody out, tie score. We use scoreboard stuff. How many out? What's the inning? What's the score? So it determines how aggressive I'm going to be on the bases. Determines what I'm going to do offensively. It determines what we're going to do defensively in our positioning. So the scoreboard and the information and the stuff that happens out in the jungle of the game at 7 o'clock every night, we work on that constantly. So the bunt game I showed you, that's just one version of that's actually shrinking it down to this is just bunting. But it's also random. You don't know what bunt defense we're running. We don't know where we're bunting that. And the thing is that there's so much learning going on defensively, offensively, looking for soft spots. I can bunt it there, and it's a kill shot. I don't have to bunt it to third base every time. But it's an awesome learning experience. It's a great environment.
Yes, in the back.
Do you do those things in spring training only, or do you do those in the regular season also?
So this is what I've found. Most coaches are really afraid of intense training to the speed of the game because they're going to get tired, they're going to get hurt. The reality of it is that if we don't train to the speed of the game, here and there, when their body is called upon to do those things, that's when they're really going to get hurt. I like our guys conditioning, running the bases hard a couple times a week. Some guys they're one for their last 15, they don't even run. Boom, when they got to open it up and get on the bases, they blow a hammy. So from the DR to the big leagues, you have to be creative. Okay, it's a different scenario. There's travel. These are big leaguers. They're more polished. It could be much more pointed in what you're doing and what you're working on. All right? But we've got guys, especially our AAA manager, Brian Esposito, who's not afraid to put this kind of training into play, educate his players as to why we're doing them, and still give them what they really want, the feel-good stuff, the front flips, the good beat, the free, nice, easy 40-mile-an-hour cookies, and then blend it with our team fundamental stuff, with our individual type work, and game speed stuff.
So that would be team fundamental stuff before the game?
Yes. And again, creativity. Here's the other thing. I like to train 10 to 12-minute segments. The rhythm and the nuances of the game. I like to train. So when we're doing our fundamentally, I call it, when we're mixing, let's say we're working on cuts and relays, which ends up involving defense, speed of the ball, speed of the runner. It involves really everything, but okay, we're doing cutoffs and relays, but it's everything really in one play. But the lower the level, all right, you can be a little more creative. Guys are a little more open to stuff, and they need more, and they have more energy to burn. They're not on airplanes and changing time zones a little less that way, right? And you have to tailor it to your club and what they need. And that's why I love it. So anyone that it kills me It's actually, we're on the field less. My schedule with my club is more compacted and way more intense. They're off their feet, quicker recovery, more energy at 7 o'clock. So I'll argue and I'll tell these guys, look, we're going to train this way. It's going to be way more intense. There's going to be way less. But there's going to be way more learning. Okay? And it's way more transferable. There's way more transfer. And I've seen it at play. I've seen it work. And when guys buy in, it's pretty awesome. You know, you remove things from the schedule. You add things to the schedule. The work days became so efficient and compact, but yet every day they were very, very different. So you go prepare, execute, review. And the review piece at the end of the day, what'd you get? You know, you're with your staff. What'd you think? What do they need? And that's when you start putting together tomorrow, individually and collectively, and say, what do they need? They need this, this, and this. All right, you know what? Hey, well, let's try this. And we start spitballing up on the whiteboard, and it's a collaboration with staff. And once you free them up, their creativity juices start flowing. It's great. We've done some pretty creative stuff. Even I see my position coaches have really, they've advanced a lot of things, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which I'm going to share with the room. And I'd love to share with everybody on that.
Okay. Bertrand.
Yeah, in Europe, you have most of the team are practicing twice or 3 times a week and playing on Sunday, just perhaps one game or double header. What would be your approach to optimize the pitcher practices? Because it's impossible to do the same than in the US and in the professional level.
So you're going to practice a couple times, right?
Yeah.
And I would throw this out, that if you're limited because you don't have a lot of pitchers,
Yeah.
I would get a video camera and I would make sure that I can video the real games that we play. And I would use that video to give coaching feedback, that the good and the bad. If a pitcher throws some good pitches, you can splice that up and you can create a little segment of 10 or 12 pitches that these are the good ones that you threw. Great curveball here, or high fastball, or really good changeup. You know, what happened here? And you can look at it on various levels. Okay, you can go deep, just location, or it could be the release point. How it looked to the hitter, and maybe you can get it'd be beautiful if you had a little press box and somebody could video from there, or you may have to get someone to video from behind the plate. So they can learn mentally even without throwing. And it may be a case that you can cut the number of reps, right, that you want them to throw aside on, let's say a guy pitches on Sunday, and you're going to practice then, I don't know, Wednesday. You try and give him Monday, Tuesday off. He's going to throw maybe 15 pitches, right? He can work on that. He can take that stuff and he can work on it, and maybe he only needs to throw 10 or 15 instead of 30, and that saves him some. But it's a way that he can practice, and it's that mental practice. But that's one of the things I would do, that if you have limited practice time, limited pitchers, use what I call mental reps.
Maybe a follow-up. For the pitchers that I train, as we're pretty much in the same situation, but I've added every 2 days they come in for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and do some pitching. Specifically, we're working out, and I use different apps like Dartfish and stuff for the motion. So look at and show them and talk about the motion with them over it. Do you think that would be too much then, or because from what I feel is like, as I was in the same situation, I thought they get two less repetitions. They get two less practice as they're when we have two practices a week. And then there maybe from that 2 hours we have, they spend like maybe half an hour separate with the catchers and throwing. The other time is conditioning and warming up and with the team, playing infield and playing a game afterwards. So, like I said, I came up with that everyone gets a repetition like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Maybe that's like overall 50 to 80 throws all every 2 days. Where they're working on specific kind of get some repetitions in. Would you think
Right,
that's
I think
much, or-
what you have to do is you have to really have the pulse of your pitchers, and that if you have some video and you can understand who are the better movers, who doesn't move well, and you have an idea of how much throwing they can do, and as they get better, they can throw a little more. But I'm also a believer that, and I'll throw this question out to you. So I showed you some throwers in sport. What is the one unique thing about pitchers from any other thrower in the sport world? What's the one unique thing? Yes.
They're always throwing the same distance.
Yeah, sort of, but
Or most times one leg.
nope. Yes, Tom?
They're throwing from standstill.
Uh,
They're starting-
that is into it, but I think there's even one that's more important.
I was going to say throwing from a standhill too, but maybe throwing downhill.
It's throwing downhill. Pitchers are the only throwers that are throwing downhill. So my view is pitchers, especially as they're learning, they need to just throw downhill. They need to get on a mound and feel what it's like to throw downhill. Because going downhill adds so much more complexity into it. Okay, think about it again. How many of you play golf? Any golfers here? Okay. If you play golf and you get a downhill lie, right? Okay, you got a fairway or whatever that's downhill. It's the hardest shot to hit. Right? Because now what do I have to do? What do I have to do to hit a shot in golf flush if I'm on a downhill lie? What am I going to have to do?
I have to adjust my body.
What do I have to adjust? What did I spend a whole lot of time just talking about? The spine. I got this foot up here. I'm going to have to be able to move my spine to control it to make that swing. Okay, so the challenge for pitchers, especially if a guy's been playing shortstop or he's a catcher, he's an outfielder, and then he gets on the mound, yeah, that's an adjustment. Okay, so I just think anytime, even if you brought guys in, and I do this with the professional guys that I coach. I tell relief pitchers, relievers, Dave can attest to this. What do they want to do before the game every day? They want to go out and they want to do their flat ground. And I say, your job is not on flat ground. Your job is throwing downhill. If you want to throw, they'll get a partner, right? And they'll throw 10 or 15 pitches to each other, squatting down, catching. If you want to do that, go over to the mound and do it. That's more game-like, right? That's the truth, throwing downhill. So even if they do that, if it's just playing catch, I think they're going to benefit from it.
Part of the reason for that, though, Paul, is that we've been sort of conditioned
We've been
in the past 20
brainwashed.
years that flat ground work was not as much of a stress on the arm. And all the latest studies, and maybe some of you guys have seen these things, showing that there's no difference. I mean, that throwing off a mound is not any harder than throwing from flat ground. It's not any more corrosive to the body. I guess that's the word for it.
And again, you don't have to you can get on the mound and you can get some benefit even if you're throwing less than 100%. Okay, if you can throw, and this is another one, I've had guys at the developmental level in the minor leagues that, especially a couple guys maybe who converted, who were position players and now they convert, and maybe they have a good curveball, but they're just learning how to pitch, and they say, oh, you know, I can't throw my curveball for a strike, right? So then what do they want to do? Oh, I'm going to start throwing a changeup. I'm not throwing my curveball anymore. And I'll say, how often have you practiced? Oh, you know, not much. Well, get on the damn mound and throw 10 curveballs a day. How's that going to hurt you? It's not. It's only going to help you. So I'm not a believer at all in flat ground throwing. It's eyewash is what it is a lot of times.
In the back.
Yeah, Paul, you talked a bit about shot putters and how the weight forces them to throw efficiently. What are your thoughts on programs like Driveline and the use of weighted balls, maybe both overweight and underweight, in terms of teaching pitchers to throw efficiently?
I think that most likely, this is just again my opinion, from seeing some video of guys with heavier balls, I think the advantage of overtraining is that a lot of times when guys are throwing the overweighted balls, it forces them to throw more efficiently. Okay? Because again, that 5-ounce ball, I can take my arm really kind of anywhere, and maybe I don't flex my elbow on time, but when I'm throwing the heavier ball, it forces you to do some things better, in my view. The underweight balls, I think, can be beneficial, but I will just say I'm not a big underweight guy. I'm not a Driveline fan of let's take underweight balls and do pull downs and see if we can throw it 115 miles an hour. I don't really see the value in that. Because a lot of times when guys are doing that stuff, now you get away from the notion, and don't get me wrong, you need to be able to throw hard enough to get to the professional level. But oftentimes, how hard is hard enough, right? So now if you are an amateur and you don't have a professional arm, okay, if you're throwing 77 miles an hour and you need to throw 84 or 85, okay, let's do some different things. Okay, and that guy may get more value by doing some underweight throwing because he's going to go faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'd like to follow up on that.
Albert.
You're saying if somebody is throwing the ball very hard already, you would go for the overweight balls, but you would stay away from the underweight balls. Do I understand that correct?
Typically, that's what I would do. And the initial research on overweight and underweight balls was done in about 1980, between 86 and 89, I believe. There was a fellow, he was a professor at University of Hawaii, and he coached at University of Hawaii. Coop Duren was his name. Really sharp guy. I had a chance to meet him a couple times and talk. And the research was done with different weights, and what they found was the benefit was 20%. So baseball weighs 5 ounces, so 20% more is only 1 ounce, 6 ounces, 1 ounce less, 4 ounces. So, and what he found also was that you achieved really the same benefit whether you threw overweight and underweight, overweight only, or underweight only. So there really was not there were gains by all the groups. There were not significant differences. But again, that's where I would say I think it may become a matter of feel. And some things are going to work better for others. So that's for you as a coach, and to work with the athlete to figure out, okay, what are you feeling from this, and monitor. what's going on with their velocity? What's going on with their command, with their movement? How well they move. So I think you just have to be careful when you. I really would not go crazy to the 8, 9, 10, 12 ounce kind of stuff. I'm not sure that there's as much value there. What I see a lot of times honestly with the guys who don't have enough velocity and they're doing really wild overweight, underweight stuff, they don't move very well. That if they improved how they moved, and probably if they improved some things as far as their body composition perhaps, or their flexibility, or the rate of force development, okay, that I think they'd get some of the same type of gains.
Thank you.
Way back. Eagle?
Just a question maybe to Jeremy, since you're the specialist in hitting. Do you think this is transferable, this information to hitting in order to create that speed?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely some over and under training with bat speed as well. The issue with undertraining, and it's not near as dangerous as it would be with pitching, is you're not really going to get hurt if you're swinging a light bat. But if you're going for mechanical changes, we'll call it mechanical changes or movement changes, as we can say today, you got to be careful with the underweight. You swinging heavier bats does the exact same thing as throwing a heavier ball. It's going to make your body line up in better ways. So in that aspect, it's directly transferable. Underweight like with bats, again, I don't play around with it that much simply because you can just get away with a lot of compensations in your swing the lighter bat you swing. So if you're going specifically for bat speed and you think the mechanics are there and the movement patterns are there, sure, like there's enough research for over and under training with bats like that to get more bat speed, but it could come at a risk of breaking down with your movement.
Yes.
Paul, you're starting a new job, so you're working with new guys, and you can start all over with them. But what is with your spinal theory? What is the main thing you start with when spring training starts?
Well,
Do you start talking about it, or you start develop it right away?
so these are guys. I'm going to be working with major league pitchers, guys who are already there. They've gotten to the major leagues. So the first thing I'm going to try and do is develop that relationship with them, find out more about them, what makes them tick, what are they interested in. There are some of those guys, right? If you haven't established yourself, there may be guys that come to me and say, hey, I hear you're a mechanics guy. Can you look at video of me and help me out? Sure. Or you understand analytics, so can you look at my pitches, which I already have done. So I'm gonna try and hone in on what a guy's strengths are first and foremost. Okay, get to understand him, what kind of success or lack of success he's had, where he's come from, what does he do well to begin with, because I want to instill confidence in him first and foremost. I'm not gonna come in the beginning of spring training and say to a guy, man, you're a shitty mover. God, we gotta address that.
Old school, babe.
Okay. Now,
Old school.
I may have some video of him that I've looked at, and in the back of my mind, I'm saying, yeah, he's a shitty mover, and he's got a pretty high risk of getting injured. But I'm not gonna throw that at him the first day or first week. I'm gonna let him do some things and let's see it, and hopefully I'm gonna also try and create an environment where, big league guys, look, they all know who Max Scherzer is. They'll talk about guys, and if I say, Scherzer's one of the best movers there is, really, yeah, got some video. I'm gonna maybe wait for him to say, hey, can I look at that? Yeah, we'll go sit down and look at that. So, just again, it's there, and these things are important because whether you're a big league guy or or not, and especially in a lot of, I mean, if you've got a guaranteed contract, some guys, if they get hurt, they know they're still going to get paid, right? But if he's really competitive, he's not going to want to miss a whole year or 3 months or whatever it may be. But if you're a guy who's just getting there to the big leagues, that 90 grand a month that you make is pretty important to you. So that guy may be more open to understanding, okay, how can I improve some things in order to perform better and make sure that I stay here. You know, so those to try and understand the motivations of guys is important, but that gets to, again, understanding them, developing a relationship with them, just trying to figure out what is it that drives this guy and how can I help him get there.
The reason I'm asking is because some of you are coaches from youth players, that it's easier to come up with new stuff to help them develop. Me and Elton are working with some of the best players on senior level in Europe, guys who went to the Olympics and all that stuff. And then I'm trying to get your story and connect it with what Dave said, like, you need to trigger them and don't just repeat. But just trying to get the same goal, but make it interesting for them. That's why I'm asking, like, when you, let's say if you are with the Mariners for your second or third year, and you have a couple of new guys, fine, but once you develop a certain relationship with your players, and you still need to trigger them with the same story, the same thing that you are working on, you look at different types of practices to get them at the same level as the other guys, or are you trying to maintain your same story?
No, I think this maybe would help with this also. So I'm going to be the major league pitching coach. So if I go in and if I'm able to talk with our minor league guys, and I have some young guys that they're at least a year or two away from the big leagues, and I know that they have issues, I'm not going to hesitate at all to say to those guys, look, if you want to get to the big leagues, your movement quality is going to have to improve. Plain and simple. Because again, I have a little bit more of the carrot and stick there, right? I've got some input into whether that guy is going to make it, and again, Dave and I were talking about this morning about how, and last night, how at our levels the model used to be really just kind of a natural selection, and we still fight with this at times. We bring guys into the organization, and he was a really good college player, hitter or pitcher, and Jeremy said this, we just talked about this also, we've all dealt with this. Really good player, but now he becomes a professional, and we see things that, man, this is not going to work, okay? Whether it's your approach or how you move, it's not going to work, and you need to be able to say to those guys pretty quickly, look, here's our philosophies, this is what we believe in, you've got to make some adjustments. That with those guys, making the adjustments, I think, sooner rather than later, and being honest with them. And most guys, in my experience, I don't know what these guys would say, most guys they want you to be honest with them, right? Because they're coming in, and again, that situation where, hey, this guy just signed, he wants to make it to the big leagues, okay? Or maybe he's been in the minors for 3 years, and he's struggling. Maybe you have a guy that hasn't made your senior team, he's on the border, or he hasn't gotten there. Sometimes those guys are very appreciative of you being brutally honest with them and saying, hey, this is what I see, and if this is your goal, this is what you're going to have to do to get there.
Can I comment on your comment? So just the firing order of what you all are talking about based off the relationship and how strong that trust is. He's got my back. It is amazing what you can speak to a guy. He trusts you. And I always talk about, speak truth to your players. There's no greater value that you can give them. That's what you're there for, right? Speak truth to them. They want it, right? But based on that relationship, if it's a really good relationship, it's unbelievable what you can do with your player. And I always say, I mean, you know, you can't be throwing truth bricks at them. You know, put some velvet on the brick now, right? Because I will tell you this, the higher you go, in my opinion, the more sensitive guys become, because there's a lot more at stake, and they're a little tighter about things. They got kids and wives. It's a lot more serious gig now, all right? So for me, it comes all about the relationship, and always, it's always better, in my opinion, in a one-on-one setting. You can make unbelievable strides with a guy.
Can I add one more thing? Well, one more thing here, that again, to build on what we're talking about, trust. Okay, trust is about allowing yourself to be vulnerable to someone. Okay, so there's really three ways of garnering trust. Okay, that if you and I, so some of you, when you came to this clinic, you will immediately have a level of trust in what I'm going to say, simply because of the knowledge that you have that I'm a major league pitching coach now. Okay? That changed. That if you saw a month ago that I was a minor league guy, and then all of a sudden you see that now I'm a major league pitching coach, you may have just done a little different calculus and said, oh, okay, whether it's implicit or explicit, your level of trust in what I was going to say may have gone up. Okay? Just on that knowledge. Maybe sometimes you have to do a little mental calculus, right, in order to develop trust. Well, if I do this, then, you know, this could happen to my career, blah, 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 etc. Right? Or some guys, it has to be experience only. Okay? To develop that trust with some people, you're just going to have to experience it and see how it goes and it plays out. So for me, that's one of the things that I have to do as the leader. I have to understand that this is going to happen, and I'll find out. Again, if it's that guy that comes up to me and says, yeah, man, I heard that you're really good with analytics. Can you help me? Okay. I know that he trusts me immediately. But if it's that guy who doesn't really engage me, all right, we're going to have to work at it, and I'm going to have to develop it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's basically what ISG is all about. I'm going to segue here into something else. But we're here to train coaches, and coaching, to me, is all about communication. It's probably the number one thing in coaching. Dave brought up using different techniques of practice to challenge. And I thought of John Wooden, who was one. You may not know who John Wooden is, but he was a basketball coach, one of the greatest coaches ever. And there are great coaches in all continents. I'm sure there's great coaches in Japan that I don't know about, that we should probably be talking about here. But John Wooden's someone I know that he would every day of practice, he would run drills in only 5-minute bursts, never more than 5 minutes. Everything was 5 minutes long. And then he went on to something else. And even if he didn't get it in at 5 minutes, he'd come back to it the next day with maybe a different drill for the same thing. And also what I thought about when Dave was talking is a story about Vince Lombardi. Another fantastic coach, was a football coach. Some of you know who Vince Lombardi was. There's a trophy, is that the Super Bowl trophy? Yeah. It's the Vince Lombardi trophy. It's named after him. And being from Wisconsin, I knew a lot about Vince Lombardi. It's kind of like we have to worship him every Sunday morning before practice, before Packer games. But one of the things that Vince Lombardi, one of the great stories about Vince Lombardi, which kind of applies to things here. Sometimes we assume that you guys know a lot more than you do, and that we're always talking about it. And I've been in Europe for 20 years, so I know what the situation is with 2-day-a-week practices and then the games on the weekends. But the guys that bring over aren't always aware of that stuff. So sometimes we talk about things that it sounds to us like it's easier to do, but because of the situation over here, it's different. And I'm reminded of a story, and we're going to end this here, and that'll be, and then we'll have some refreshments back there. The table looks like everything's set up. But Vince Lombardi was a really strict disciplinarian, and he wanted his practices to work perfectly every time. And there the glory years of Green Day were back in the 60s, and he had there was 2 players on that team that were kind of jokers. One was a guy named Paul Hornung, who won the Heisman Trophy in college, was the best college football player. And he had a receiver on that team named Max McGee. And they were both jokers. They would sneak out at night and put dummies under their blankets in their beds, so they go out after curfew and have a few beers at the bars. And one day at practice, Lombardi was just getting completely angry because nobody was doing the drills correctly. So he got mad. He's screaming and yelling, blows his whistle, gets everybody down on the sidelines, and he said, "Gentlemen, we're going to go back to the beginnings. This is a football." And Max McGee raised his hand and said, "Hey, coach, hold it. You're going too fast." So sometimes we go a little too fast at curve. That happens. Write down the questions. Tomorrow night we're having a hot stove. And I know there were some people that wanted to ask some questions tonight. Write them down again. And for our hot stove tomorrow, you're going to probably have more things during the day that'll come up. Think about it. Write them down, because if you don't write them down, what happens? You forget them. All right? So write them down and ask them tomorrow night at the hot stove. Right now, we got some refreshments in the back. George, you have an announcement? Or?
First of all, thank you guys.